It's finally starting to feel like all the nerfs from the start of Season 7 are actually kicking in. Even the patch just now followed through with more nerfs for Baptiste and Brigitte, two consistently top supports. But while most supports have been nerfed in the past 2 seasons, there's been plenty of buffs to go around as well, and not just to the worst heroes. Season 8's got a lot of changes, so let's get into the support tier list, starting at the bottom. She's in D tier, even though she's still a rounded support that's seen across all ranks, and even in the sweatiest games at the top. Supports are just still so good all around that you can't really place anybody below Mercy, even though she is both really easy to get into and also straightforward to master. Just by only focusing on surviving, you can get respectable work done. All the playmaking and aggressive moves that other supports can do to break the mold just kinda don't apply to Mercy. Just hang on to the right pocket and keep everyone topped up every once in a while. Now that sounds good, but it's also the reason why she's so low tier. Because you rely on your teammates way more than other supports, it makes it a lot harder to outplay your opponents. The best you can do is just glide away when you get targeted by a dive. There's no fighting back, and once you start to get the higher ranks, you'll be way more focused by up to the entire enemy team. Full dive comps are becoming super strong, and I'm really thinking about Tracer and Sombra here. Even though Sombra is still coming into her own, she's a top 5 Mercy hunting hero. There are just a lot of heroes in the game right now that can put massive pressure on Mercy at no risk at all. But is that going to happen every game? Not at all. It depends on your rank, the heroes of both teams, and pretty importantly, the map you're playing on as well. A Mercy on Paraíso is a lot harder to punish than a Mercy on King's Row, but even King's Row has some points where there's plenty of room to maneuver around flankers hunting you. You just might have to swap when you start getting more focused, which is still fine, but most other supports are way harder to counter, putting them further ahead in the list. Next up is Zenyatta in C tier. I think it would actually be very likely to see more Zenyatta play if he didn't receive his Discord and health changes. Both Ramattra and Mauga are stronger than before, but for Zenyatta, their fat targets are focusing down with your Discord orb. 25 extra health is good for duels, but the Discord cooldown makes it a lot harder to keep effective damage on the frontline. You can't always respond to someone spontaneously pushing forward, so it means spending less time spamming frontline. Losing that is really tough because half of Zen's effectiveness is just his raw damage. It's not enough to just Discord someone and let your team take care of it. And on the other hand, his Harmony Orb may be stronger, but it's been a long time since Zen was a top dive support. He's just too weak himself to survive the engage. Just like Mercy, he has a tough time when getting focused, but even though he has a lower pick rate compared to her, he's much better at handling being countered. That's what makes the big difference. He's actually able to defend himself and pressure frontline, and Discord Orb is a much better tool than damage boost for focusing down the right enemies. Moira is next, although she's sitting quite comfortably up in B tier. But Moira players make the hero herself hard to place. She's amazing at healing massive amounts in the frontline, which is great for this season with Brawl tanks pushing that line up. And she has her Fade almost always available to keep repositioning during the fight, but that's the textbook way to play her. So why do that when you can hit the flank, force a duel, and still get back to your team to dump a ton of healing on them? Well, the answer is to actually help your team with your insane healing neutral in an aggressive way. But the big reason why Moira is in B tier is that it is totally possible to go crazy on the flank and do whatever and still return to top of your team. It's not always fun for the front line because you can't really take any space while your big healing source is off trying to slowly suck a pick off the enemy's backline. But to be really honest, unless you're dying a lot as Moira or just not healing enough, you'll be totally fine at supporting any team composition. Moira's neutral may be only small damage and big heals, but big heals gives you big ult charge, and Moira's ultimate is a sweet game changer. She's still seriously limited by having zero utility for her team. Moira heals a lot and deals a little. She's got her Fade to help her not die while doing that, but that's it. She does the healing part really well for clumped up teams, but the more spread out people are, the harder it's gonna get. She's still dependent on her team even as one of the best survivalists on the support roster, but to end on a more positive note, she's still a stable pick and doing better than before. Next up, Illari may still be in B tier, but she's slipping more and more from her former glory. She's still a very good hero, but she's way harder to get good at than most other supports. Her optimal dueling playstyle is so unique, which already makes her more difficult. And now with the nerfs, it's almost impossible to get value without at least playing that style somewhat well. Just average gameplay will do you more harm than good. Zenyatta may seem similar, but it's super easy to get started with him by just discording the heroes you want focused down and sticking to the main sightline most of the time. Just Discord orb management alone will make you a better Zen player. But for Illari, you've got to have the aim, movement, timing, and positioning. She's still considerably better than Zen, thanks to the healthy advantages of a small hitbox, her pylon to split attention, and critically, the burst heal on her secondary fire that's only available to Zenyatta in his ultimate. Even her damage output is high enough that it beats out Zen pretty easily. But even though she's the best support for just raw damage output, the size of her projectiles recently got nerfed. It's not easy damage anymore. That makes it even harder to be more flanky and get more effective damage. And even her pylon has been steadily weakened to the 100 health and 15-second cooldown it has today. Her default playstyle is good, but to rise above merely 40 to 50% win rate, you've got to find aggressive duels, win them, and then survive them. You'll still win games by just shooting the enemy tank and healing yours, but Baptiste is definitely more suited to doing that. Just try to prioritize the dueling style and then fill in your downtime with spam to keep pressure up. It's the best way to get the most out of her niche as a hero. Even though the newest support hero is a bit tougher to play, Lifeweaver, the second newest one, is way easier. It's a little bit crazy how easy it is comparatively, but they're very different heroes. Even though Lifeweaver received more nerfs than most, none of them really hurt his playstyle. He still pumps out a lot of healing and his life grip is still super effective at saving your teammates in an almost uncountable way. There's even a lot of value to your pedal platform, but even just using it to survive, complementary to your dash, just helps you fulfill the core playstyle even more, heal and save, and then survive more to heal and save even more. The value he brings to his team is super simple, way simpler than Illari's, but it is just insanely effective. And the good thing for Lifeweaver is that he doesn't sacrifice utility for an easy neutral. His healing blossoms and life grip are easy to manage in the front line, but you always have the option to use your pedal platform to support a rotation or flank. It's still not a lot of variety in gameplay, but with the few strengths that Lifeweaver has, he really owns them. Finally, moving on to A tier, starting with Brigitte. She's been all over the place recently. Her whip shot damage gets buffed by 10, then that apparently made her too strong so it got reverted, and then Winston gets true damage on his Tesla cannon that ignores Briggs' armor, but really, she's still fine. She's just as good as before, except now into Winston, you just don't have armor. But that's fine. You should probably be escaping Winston's range anyway, so even though the change makes Winston more dangerous, you always have the option to just shield bash away. Don't do the same mistake that this guy did. As long as you don't get overconfident in your hero, you'll be fine. Briggs is pretty defensive, but that doesn't mean she's inactive. She has a lot of abilities, and with the ability to keep triggering Inspire for your team while you're playing, you can really stretch the limits of what you can do for your team. Not every hero has that option, and it makes Briggle a lot better. Push, defend, snipe a clutch heal, whip shot to boop or even to kill, and all the time you're providing good heals all around. And even though heroes besides Winston have been buffed, she's totally capable of handling them. Just her shield alone is perfect for blocking big instances of damage from Doomfist, Tracer, or Sombra, giving you and your team enough time to react defensively. Her overall numbers are still pretty low, and she's definitely more vulnerable lately, so even though she's better than half the supports in the game, she's still the bottom of A tier. Next up is Ana, and I'll be honest, there's not much to say. Despite nerfs, she's a strong enough hero to hold her own. She's still got one of the highest impact abilities in the game, Biotic Nade. And just the ability to consistently heal from range is amazing, and pretty underrated too. Both Mauga and Ramattra's playstyles are more suited to a faster support that can push with them in the front line, but they're also massive tanks, perfect to beef up with a full Ana pocket. But even though the nerfs she received haven't really touched her overall effectiveness, having both your main cooldowns at 12 and 15 seconds is tough without any mobility or shield to keep yourself alive during your downtime. It's made her harder to play, and she straight up just can't throw as many nades as before, which definitely affects her power level compared to other supports. Finally, at the top of A tier is Baptiste, but unlike Ana, he is really struggling to hold on to this spot. The nerfs have really been piled on one after another. It's gotten to the point where I'm not even really confident in asking my teammates to play Baptiste anymore. Is he even worth it? The answer is, of course, a stupidly obvious yes. His kit is still stacked, but every part of it is becoming slowly less oppressive, the latest iteration being his damage uptime. But that was his only change this season, and it's not really a noticeable nerf. Only a few times will Baptiste actually be vulnerable while reloading, and he still has his abilities to keep his team up regardless if he's got no ammo left. But even though he's still strong, the brawl meta where he thrives is changing. It's getting less about the insane mitigation abilities of heroes like Reinhardt and Sigma, and more about the raw speed and damage you can use in your push. Mauga and Ramattra are definitely more rush than brawl, and it's actually pretty hard for Bap to handle if they do get on top of him. Immortality field is so low now that it gets killed almost instantly. I still think it's going to be a couple patches before Baptiste gets put anywhere below the top of A tier, but at least now he's finally not the most powerful pick in almost every situation. Now onto a fresh new S tier without Bap. Second to the main guy at the top is Kiriko, who received some weird changes that were snuck into this patch at the last second. A nerf to her Suzu invincibility duration, a buff to her Suzu healing, and a second buff to her healing projectile speed. So first impression, 2 buffs are better than 1 nerf. But once you actually try it out, the 0.2 seconds lost from the Suzu duration is massive. I've mentioned it before and I've mentioned it again. Suzu is different from Immortality Field in that everyone will keep shooting the Suzu targets to damage them as soon as the effect ends, contrary to Immortality Field where the attention is drawn first to the field and then to the target. Saving targets from a duel should still be fine, but it's a lot harder to save someone from multiple sources of damage. Even though the Suzu heals more, the instant damage you receive after the Suzu ends is pretty monumental. But overall, compared to other heroes, she's amazing. The one thing she really missed was consistent healing, but now that's been massively alleviated by a projectile speed increase. The rest of her kit, the high speed ultimate, the mobility, just the kunai style focus targets down, it all fits in really well with both dive and rush for this faster season. She's only bested by the ultimate speedster himself, Lucio. He's at the top of S tier for that sweet clean speed. All the top tanks in the game right now love that speed. Mauga, Ramattra, even Winston and Sigma who don't need it to get the job done can massively improve with that extra maneuverability. Now I do know that Lucio is hard to get value out of and needs a lot of teamwork, but the game right now is perfect for him. Any composition without speed against one with it will almost always get overrun. Some maps will still allow for some spammy gameplay, but slower and reactive abilities have gotten a lot weaker. Proactive and fast ones have not. Lucio hasn't been changed for so long because of that dormant Speed Force ability. When he finally gets going, he sticks along for a while. A well-needed change to switch comps up for a new season. That's it for the Season 8 support tier list. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.